Hello and welcome to a brand new channel called FJC Guitars. Now I've been interested in guitars for a long time now, probably about 30 years or more, and I've recently acquired a reasonably large collection of archtop jazz guitars, jazz being my thing in particular, and I thought the time was right to set up a new channel and share some of the things I've learned about playing music and some of the things I've learned about guitar maintenance, and bring it all together on this channel. Because there seems to be quite a lot of crossover in the IT world, because that's what I'm primarily known for, the Flash Jazz Cat channel, which is basically about 8-bit Atari computers. But I've spoken to a lot of people in the community, and the number of them who are also interested in music, and in particular in guitars in general, is quite remarkable. There's a lot of crossover there. So hopefully I'll get a lot of people wandering over from the Atari channel to come and have a look at what's going on here. I don't really know what the upload schedule is going to be like with this channel and really what's going to feature on it. I have a couple of sort of outstanding jobs that I need to get done, so I thought I'd film them. I'm going to have to be careful with the algorithm, of course, because I don't want the algorithm to think that this is solely about modifying guitars and doing setups and that kind of thing. So I'm going to have to be careful how I sort of mix the content, because there's going to be playing, instruction, maintenance and stuff. I don't know how it's going to work, but if you want to come along for the ride, I will be pleased to have your company. So anyway, the subject of this particular video is going to be an Ibanez, or Ibanez, however you want to pronounce it, Artcore Expressionist guitar, which I bought second hand a few weeks back. And I'd actually been looking at this guitar back when I only had one archtop guitar, which was a 1984 Japanese Ibanez GB10 George Benson signature guitar, and I'd been playing that guitar for about 20 years. I took it out clubs and pubs years ago, so it's been around the block a bit, but I only had that one. I didn't really have any first-hand experience of other archtop jazz guitars. So I think it was early in 2022 I decided I wanted a second guitar. I could afford it, so I thought, why not? I wanted this one, the AKJV95 Artcore Expressionist guitar, and it's actually a pre-relict, a sort of factory-aged guitar. But by the time I started looking for one online, they'd been discontinued and you just could not buy them, new or second-hand at all. I looked and looked for months on end to try and find one, and eventually I realised that the LGB30 guitar, the George Benson signature, the little Georgie Benson guitar, was basically the same guitar but with a bit of a nicer finish, slightly nicer hardware, rolled frets, ebony fretboard, etc, etc, and of course the George Benson branding, different tailpiece. So I elected to get one of them. I think I paid 950 quid for it at the time, which was a pretty good bargain. It was a display model from a guitar shop in London, and I was very happy with that. But of course, a few years later, I got the itch to expand the collection a little bit from the two archtops, and I finally, among others, which you'll see as the channel develops, I found one of these AKJV95 guitars over in Carlisle in the UK for 425 quid, I think it was, in really, really nice condition. And there are actually two variations of this guitar. There was a prior one called an AKJV90D, which I managed to find in South Shields, only a couple of miles away, a few weeks prior to that, and it was nearly the same as the one that I was after, but not quite. And since I've now got both of them, I've noticed quite a few differences, and in another video I want to go through all of these different variations on this sort of Gibson AS175 copy Ibanez guitar. They're all based on the same body shape, and note the differences between them, because they've all got different neck profiles, all sorts of subtle differences which haven't always been documented elsewhere. So it's become kind of a collecting thing in a way, because once I started to acquire these guitars based on the same basic design, it just became a thing whereby, well, look, I'm going to have to finish the collection here. It's just one of those things I've got to do, and I've finished the collection. So what I want to do with this, since I've got two guitars, very similar guitars that are both relic, and the AKJV95 does not have the factory dings on the body, which nobody liked on the 90D, its predecessor, and it's got a lovely satin amber finish. Now what I want to do with that one is de-relic it, so replace all the hardware, clean it all up, and make it look as if it would have looked had it come out of the factory without the factory relicing on it, which I think is going to be quite doable. And I've bought all the parts to do that, which cost more money, of course. But there's also a problem that I'm hoping to sort out, which I'll show you. So this is the AKJV95 Artcore Expressionist guitar. As you can see, it's got this very nice satin lacquer finish. There's no factory dings on it. I'll show you the other one. So this is the 90D, the predecessor, and as you can see, it's got all these little factory dings all over the body, which they're actually stabbed at the wood to make it look aged, which is a real shame. But it plays really nicely, this one, and I did a lot of work. I leveled the frets on it, and I've did work on the scratch plate and stuff. And I don't really want to mess around with this one too much. So, and there's not really much point in putting nice hardware on a guitar that's covered in dings on the body. That was the thinking behind it anyway. And this one's got no real problems in terms of playability now. So I'm quite happy with that one, and the pickups are decent and it sounds nice plugged in. I do play them acoustically quite a lot of the time, but we'll get into amplification and amplifiers a little bit later on. So this guitar, I don't really want to change it anymore. I like it, so there it is. So this one, the 95, its successor, which has no factory dings on the body, but it has the aged hardware, same pickups. The neck is actually thinner on this one, which no videos or literature that I was reading about the two guitars pointed out. So it's basically got the same neck profile as this one, which is the George Benson signature LGB30 guitar, which, as you can see, it's based on the same body shape. The 95's body is a tad shallower as well, oddly enough, by about 3mm. But yeah, basically the same neck design as on this one. But this one's very, very playable. It's actually got gauge 11 strings on. All the other ones have got gauge 12 flat wounds. These are 11s, D'Addarios. I think I'm inclined to stick with the 11s on this one because it plays nicely. But we've got a rattle. I don't know if you can hear it. There's a lot of rattling coming from this guitar, and it seems to be coming from the bridge. It could be coming from the tailpiece, could be coming from the pickup springs as well, of course. If you've had an archtop guitar, you'll know that they often have all sorts of difficult to track down rattling noises going on. My immediate idea was to change the bridge for a wooden one or a different tune-o-matic bridge, but here we hit the problem, is that any change you make, if you change any of the hardware on the guitar, it's going to look completely out of place because it's not going to have that relict finish on it. So you can't really change much without spoiling the whole relict appearance of the guitar. So I thought, if I'm going to change the bridge, potentially I'll have the pickups off and start messing around with the springs, I might as well just de-relic it completely, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So it sounds nice, but you can't notice it quite as much when it's amplified, but you can still hear it, obviously. And it's not, as far as I can tell, it's not fret buzzing. The action's fine, the neck's lovely. It's coming from up here, and I think it's the springs in this bridge. It's one of the cheaper bridge designs, and I've tried putting my finger on the saddle here when it's buzzing, and it does change things, and if I move the bridge around, it changes the characteristics of the buzzing and all that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping that when I've done the modifications on this, the buzz will be fixed and I'll be able to demo this guitar and show you how nice it sounds properly. Okay, Okay, so let's get the patient on the table anyway, and we'll get the strings off and we'll clean the body up and we'll start to replace all this hardware. I'm not too sure what I'm going to do about the frets yet. They are slightly worn, but I kind of don't want to touch them at the moment. I don't think it necessarily warrants a full fret level, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see what it looks like when the strings are off anyway. But as you can see, the finish is lovely, and they've used some really nice wood on this guitar, and it's got a fantastic acoustic and amplified tone as well. There's something a little bit special about this one, even though it retailed for, I think it was a 600 quid or 600 euro thereabouts guitar when it first came out in 2018. It's very nice though. It's a very nice guitar, and there's actually a fella who I've been talking to on the Jazz Guitar Forum, which I think is based in Germany, and he had one of these things a few years back, and he did the same thing I'm about to do with it. He de-reliced it completely. Now he actually put a pair of Seymour Duncan Seth Lover pickups in, which I've got no complaints about the stock Ibanez Alnico Super 58 humbucker pickups. I find them okay, and the Seth Lovers are like quite expensive. I think you're looking at about 350 quid it would cost me to get a pair of replacement pickups of that type to put in this guitar, so I'm not going to do that at the moment. Now the gentleman on the Jazz Guitar Forum, he put one of these tailpieces on the guitar. I was actually originally going to put this one on the LGB30, the natural wood finish one, but I kind of chickened out eventually. I thought I'd rather leave it stock. I don't particularly care for the tailpiece on the George Benson one, but yeah, I sort of thought better of it. Now that would look very nice, it has to be said, but in the first instance I've decided to go with this. If I'll just move the guitar out the way a little bit, I'll show you what we've actually got in the parts box so far. Post in the comments what you think of that tailpiece. In fact, it's an ES175 reproduction tailpiece, but I found this one, which is the same original Ibanez tailpiece, and I'm going to go with that for the moment, just because it's completely reversible. It's the same part, and it's going to be a drop-in fit. Same screw holes. Obviously I've got doweling and stuff, all the things I'd need to plug the original holes in the guitar and fit the ES175 tailpiece if I wanted. But I'm disinclined to do that for now. I'm just going to go with the original tailpiece. So that's the tailpiece. We've also got, because I'm not replacing the pickups, I'm just going to put new pickup covers on them. I'll try and link to all the stuff I bought, just in case it might be of interest to somebody. So they've got new pickup covers. They were very inexpensive. Gold. I've got a selector switch, which is decent quality. It should be more or less comparable with the one that's coming off, but of course it's gold. Now these pickup rings I bought, these were cheap as well. I bought two of the deeper ones because they're going to need to be quite tall to fit the archtop, but of course they're still going to need to be profiled to the top of the guitar, and that's going to be some work. There's going to be a lot of filing going on, so I'm in two minds about the pickup rings. We'll see how the old pickup rings look with the new pickup covers. I even bought a truss rod cover from AliExpress, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the one that's on there. All of the screws on the guitar also aged and reliced as well, so almost everything has been infested with this this antique look. These are go-to machine heads. These were £60, but they're nice. They're a drop-in replacement for the Ibanez machine heads that are already on the guitar. Well, they are in fact go-tos as well, but they'll be a lower price point, no doubt. These are a little bit nicer. They're slightly different shape, but more or less the same. And they should be nice and accurate, nice and solid tuning. I bought several strap buttons because the first ones I bought, if I can find them, they all had this sort of horrible plasticky sort of toy gold colour on them. It is not very nice. They are metal. But two attempts at buying strap buttons that were the same as the ones on the guitar, and they both had this awful yellowy gold finish. But I got third time lucky. I decided to buy something slightly different shape, and they are a much nicer shade. It's just a bit duller, and I prefer it. We've got the bracket for the pickguard. We've got loads of black screws of various types that I've bought just to see if any of them will actually be suitable for what I'm doing. Likewise, loads of gold screws. I've got pickup springs in case they turn out to be the cause of the issue. I've got the Tune-o-matic bridge, which is actually off one of the LGB30 guitars. It's a bit of a nicer part, so we're going to try and go with that one before I swap it over to a wooden bridge if I end up having to do that. We've got pole pieces for the pickups in gold. We've got nuts and washers in gold for the jack, which I'm not going to bother replacing the jack. I'm going to just dress them with these. More gold screws, more screws, another set of pickup springs and screws. Everything we could possibly need to do this job. So we'll pop the scratch plate off here. Interestingly enough, there's an extra hole down here. Somebody's had a different scratch plate on this guitar at some point in its history, and has eventually, before they sold it, put the original one back on. It's kind of interesting. So we'll take the strings off anyway. Now I want to put these strings back on when I'm finished refitting the guitar to test it, to see if the buzz is gone. I don't want to sacrifice a new set of strings on those tests, so I'm going to keep them in decent shape. Now that's interesting, this string's a bit stuck. I wonder if that's why it was making a noise. So I'll have to bear that in mind when I do put these strings back on the guitar, that if it is actually a dodgy string, I'm not going to get rid of the buzz, so I might have to actually put a new set on. So as you can hopefully see here, this one's got a nice ebony fretboard, unlike the previous model which has rosewood fretboard. That's a nice touch. There's a funny little scar along the fretboard at this position. I can't imagine what on earth that's from, but I'm sure that'll buff out no problem. It's not particularly noticeable. I don't know what it is. The frets really don't look too bad at all. Very, very minimal fret wear. A little bit on the first and second, but nothing too bad at all. I'm really disinclined to bother at the moment. I can always do it later on. So no real problems at all with the fretboard. The neck at the heel here isn't really finished all that nicely. There's a lot of open pores that haven't been filled, and you can feel them with your fingers when you're moving them up and down the board. But I mean, it's probably part and parcel of the sort of antique look and feel of the guitar. But generally speaking, the finishing is really nice. The binding, apart from in a couple of places, is spot on. And as you can see, the back is just, it's gorgeous. There's not a mark on it, and it's just this gorgeous flame, is that flame maple, I suppose? And it's got this translucent effect on it, depending on where you look at it. It's absolutely lovely. And it does have this scarf joint up here, which a few people online I noticed had a problem with, but it doesn't bother me in the least. I'm not in the least bit worried about that. I'm sure this is probably a feature of a lot of the Artcore guitars that don't have a natural wood finish. But you have to kind of wonder, I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't suit the colour of the wood, this kind of hardware effect, but it's got this waxy sort of finish on the top, and you have to wonder what they were thinking of in terms of what an antique guitar looks like, because I've never seen hardware go like this before. It's absolutely strange. So I'm tempted to regard it more as a kind of a design statement than an actual serious attempt to make the guitar look old. But that's kind of one of the reasons I want to make this reversible, because I don't know how this is going to turn out and whether I'm actually going to like the result. So we'll just have to do it and see. Okay, so there's the strap button and the tailpiece clip removed. And you got the little ground wire, of course, on the end there. You can just see that poking out, so we'll have to sandwich that underneath the new one. And if we grab the new one here, we can see they've already hollowed out that area so that the earth wire is going to contact that, so that's very well thought out. So this is the first bit we can put on, and I think it's going to look very nice. I have to say, I'm kind of liking this already. That looks pretty nice.
Hello.
Hello, Alice. No, no. Oh, he's away, is he? Oh, Christ almighty. No, I'm just making a video about guitars today. Anyway, oh, it's nice chatting to you. Anyway, I'm going to get on with this now, I suppose. Right, alright then. Right, I'll see you later. Draw. And the go-to, these have actually got Xenu written on the back, so I'm not sure if they're go-to tuners after all, actually. But these are indeed a perfect drop-in fit. Of course, the fiddly part's going to be the pickups. That's going to be the time-consuming part. So we've got to take the cover off, deal with any wax if they're potted pickups, and do a bit of soldering, replace the switch, what have you. So hopefully it'll all be doable. Well, that's quite interesting because we can disregard the possibility of pickup springs rattling and being the source of the problem here, because there are no pickup springs. They've already replaced the springs with what looks like surgical tubing here. So there you are. So they've already taken the springs off and they've put tubing in. Hopefully that rattle was the bridge, because if it wasn't, it certainly isn't the pickups. So before I even started this particular job, I knew it would probably be difficult. So I did the first pickup cover. As you can see, I've removed it here. I did that with the camera off. And then I flicked the camera on again when I did the second one, because I kind of knew what I was doing by that point. And I'm preheating the pickup here because it sinks just such a tremendous amount of heat, the base plate and the cover itself. And this is a good quality soldering iron, and I've got it up set to 450 degrees C, and with a big chisel tip on. And I think I went for a larger tip later on, but it's absolutely painful. You can be sitting there for quite literally sitting there for 10 minutes, waiting for that solder, which is probably lead free, which didn't help, to melt. It's just a complete nightmare. So that's what I'm doing. Obviously, I did eventually get the thing to melt. You can see the wax, because the pickup's potted and the wax melts naturally before anything else does. But what an absolute nightmare. If I did this again, I'd just splash the money on some like-for-like pickups, I think, with gold covers on them, rather than do this again. But you can see the struggle I'm having here, and the whole thing becomes incredibly hot as well. I didn't have the common sense at that point to actually wear some gloves. I do get some gardening gloves for when I put the thing back together later on. I ended up with a blister on the end of my finger. But anyway, it's come off finally, and it's got some desoldering wick completely attached. Well, okay, I've got the pickup covers on. It was a tremendous fight, it has to be said. It was the first time I've ever done anything like this, so although I'm very experienced with soldering, I wasn't prepared for the enormous amount of what looked like lead-free solder holding the old pickup covers on. It was just a tremendous job to get them off. I ended up having to wear gloves for the heat. I've got a bit of a blister on the end of this finger. These things just sink an enormous amount of heat, and the thing was boiling hot by the time the solder was ready to let go. So I used gardening gloves when I put the new ones on, and I cut most of the old solder blob off the bottom of the pickup, and that made life a lot easier. I just used some 60-40 solder, and it wasn't that hard to put the new ones back on. But annoyingly, I bought, as I mentioned earlier, I bought new Polepiece screws for the pickups. The bridge pickup screws are fine somehow, but the other ones are a bit tarnished. I don't know why they're different. And I researched this beforehand to see what thread I needed on the Polepiece screws, and it said on the internet that Ibanez uses metric thread, whereby Gibson, etc. would be using imperial. So I bought metric thread screws, and it turns out they're too small, and they just fall straight through the hole. and it's a bank holiday weekend, so I won't be able to get hold of the correct thread probably till the end of next week. These ones will just have to stay in for the time being, so that was annoying. So I've done a little bit of rewiring on the loom here. I'm not fussed. I don't mind the fact that these are mini pots. It doesn't bother me at all. I just checked just to see if there was any obviously poor soldering. I've resoldered the jack because that was a bit looked like it was frayed a bit, and the switch, obviously I've put the new switch on. I've put some shrink fit over the wires here. It looks a little bit nicer. Probably be a bit stronger as well. So obviously later on I'm going to have to fish this little lot back through the inside of the guitar, which I've also never done before, so that should be an interesting experience. So we can put this little lot to one side for now. I'm hoping that the pickups are going to be okay. They were wax potted. I didn't have more wax to put in them. I didn't clean all of the wax off. I just left what residue was there, and I've pushed them firmly back into the covers, and hopefully that'll be fine. I mean, some people prefer to have the pickup completely unpotted so it can kind of breathe. I'm not fussed. However they came out the factory suits me. So hopefully we won't get microphonics or any kinds of problems when I put everything back together again. Fingers crossed. As I say, this is the first time I've done it, so I'm learning as I go, and of course the next time I do this it's going to be a lot easier because I'll know what to expect. But so let's put this wiring loom to one side for the time being, and let's clean the body of the guitar and look at the fretboard, oil the fingerboard a little bit, and we'll put all the new hardware on it, and then we'll finish it off by putting the wiring back into it. Just another little note here, just for absolute openness and clarity. When I was taking the knobs off the volume and tone pots here, they were incredibly stiff.
I've had no complaints so far.
And when I think back, what I could have done, I suppose, is put some sort of metal sheet on the top of the guitar, and maybe use something to lever the knob from the bottom. I don't know, I'm not too sure. I need to look into how best to do that, but I just use my bare hands, and there's an imprint of my thumbnail in the wood, because I suppose this is spruce, the top on this guitar, and it's so soft. I hadn't realised just how soft it is, and there's a little imprint of me thumbnail in the top of the guitar there, which is a little bit annoying. There's a one here as well. Yeah, that's pretty annoying, but there you go again. It's the first time I'm doing this, so I've taken the knobs off some other guitars in the collection, and they weren't as stiff as this one. They were just absolutely awful to get off. But yeah, so I'll be watching out for that in the future. Always practice on your own stuff. So of course even the plastic parts on this guitar are aged. This is what it looks like in its original condition. I think they've just used a lower grade ABS plastic, and they've gone over it with a piece of sandpaper in the factory, because if you look at the inside it's a little bit more shiny, and it looks okay I suppose on the aged version of the guitar, but not quite so nice if we're going to put all new hardware on it. So I've done this one already, and you can see I've just gone at it with various grades of wet sandpaper, the kind of fine grade stuff, 800, 1200, 2000, and then I've gone over it with this stuff here, auto cell metal polish. I don't want it too glossy. I don't think it would suit the guitar, but if you compare the two, I don't know if you can see, it looks a bit nicer than the aged part at the top. So I'm going to do this one in exactly the same way, and then I'm going to have a look at the pickguard, because of course that's all scratched up and aged as well. I like the pickguard. I've got no problem with the orange, although that's supposed to look like horribly discoloured plastic. I don't have a problem with the orange. I think it suits the colouring of the guitar. So I'm going to take the bracket off, and I'm just going to try and buff out some of those scratches. I mean, scratch plates are they're gonna wear anyway. You can see even since I've been playing the guitar here, I've worn, or somebody, probably the previous owner, has worn this bit, kind of a bit shiny. So we'll just dull it off so we'll get some sort of satin finish. That's the original finish on the back. It's not glossy, so we don't want it to end up glossy at all. We just want the top to look a bit similar to that side. So we won't spend too much time labouring over that, but we'll just make a token attempt at tidying it up. So the 2000 grit's got us pretty much close to where we want to be, and I'm just going to finish it off with this polish gently as possible because I don't want it to go too glossy. So we're not going to labour it too much. Polishing, polishing, polishing. Okay, I think that'll probably do the trick. So we'll now move on to the pickguard. Now I'm going to be careful with this because previously on the AKJV90-D guitar, this orange stuff here started to come off on my hands when I was playing. My fingers were I was playing with thumb and fingers were over here. So I don't know exactly what this stuff is. So I wiped it all off with isopropyl alcohol, and I was left with a bright yellow stripe because it's actually white plastic, as you can see from the screw hole here. And that looked awful on the antiqued guitar especially. So I came up with all sorts of possibilities for reinstating this orange colour, and eventually I used acrylic model paints, and I hand painted the orange band back around the outside of the pickguard. It's a little bit nicer than this one actually. I could almost swap them over. And then I sealed it with matte enamel varnish, a couple of coats of that, and it seems to not come off anymore, and it looks fine. I'll flash a picture up on the screen. This one looks a bit ropey. It's not actually as nice, so I'm in sort of two minds about whether to swap the pickguards over or just do something dramatic with this one, but it's something you can do later on. It's not really the end of the world. I don't really want to replace the pickguard with a non-standard part. You can actually buy, I thought you could buy the slightly nicer pickguard for the AKJ95, which I'll flash up on the screen as well. But I attempted to order that from Germany. They were out of stock, and they were about 50 quid a piece or something. If you go too far down that rabbit hole, it just gets completely out of hand. I quite like this pickguard because it's thin, and it sort of seems to help my playing when the pickguard isn't too thick, because I sort of rest my fingers here just like this and they slide across the top of the pickguard. So when the pickguard isn't too thick, it seems to help. But anyway, let's just try and slightly improve the look of this one. What I don't want to do is start to bevel the milled edge on the pickguard, so I'm going to be careful to try and keep this as flat as possible. Right, I'll stop there. I don't want it any more shiny than that. I think it looks a bit better than it did. So I did cheat a bit last night as well, and I put the machine heads on because it was like a 5-minute job. Just to give myself an idea of what the thing was going to look like when it was finished. And they did in fact go on without any problems whatsoever. Absolutely drop in, perfect fit, no problem at all. Took like 5 minutes to put them all on, and they do feel very nice, so I'm sure they're going to be good for tuning stability. The adjustment screws that I ordered, and these are, I can't remember what these are, but these are about 2.5mm threads, so they're slightly about M2.5. Again, I was led to believe that these were metric screws, and of course they don't fit. They don't fit in these little holes on the lugs here. These being the original screws, you can see in fact that they are visibly wider. So I had to order some different gold screws, and they won't come until, because we got the bank holiday, so they won't turn up until probably the end of next week. And I don't even know if they're going to be the correct part. So we're just going to have to go with the original pole pieces and adjustment screws for the time being, but I'm really annoyed about that because I really thought I had absolutely everything that I needed, and quite obviously I do not. And I think the most difficult part yet to do, which I've also never done before, is fishing all the electronics back through the body of the guitar. So that's going to be fun. I expect a lot of cursing when I'm doing that, but you know, you've got to... We're never going to learn unless we do it, so we'll get on and do the frets. In fact, you know what it is, I've changed my mind. I've had the fret rocker over the fretboard here. Obviously I've straightened it with the fret ruler, so the neck's dead straight. I've had the fret rocker up and down the frets here. I can't see anything wrong with it, and the wear on the frets is so absolutely minuscule. I just don't think it's worth the bother. Right, so I've started to put the electronics back in the guitar. I did a little bit off camera. I had a bit of a false start because I was going through the pickup holes initially until it dawned on me that obviously it's better to drop the pickups through the F-hole, bring them out, fit them first, and then we can do everything through the F-hole here because we've just got to worry about this area. So that was a bit stupid of me, but I did twig on anyway. Eventually, as I say, I'm going to leave the frets for now. The thinking behind that is I just don't want to do too many things to this guitar to affect the setup all at once, because it's stressful enough doing this work for the first time without worrying about maybe changing the geometry of the frets, just for the sake of a tiny bit of playway on the low frets. We can look at that later on. I can easily whip the strings off in the future and do a fret level, so I'm not going to worry about that for now. I've got two bridges actually. I've got a choice of bridges. I think I'm going to stick with the Tune-o-matic initially. Of course, this is actually off an LGB30 because I don't use the Tune-o-matic bridges with those ones, and so I've pinched it off that one, and of course it's a perfect fit on the bass. And I did notice on the bass, it gives the impression that the footing for the bridge is made of ebony, but it's not. It looks like it's rosewood or something that's just dyed, basically. So that's quite an interesting thing. So that's what that's going to look like on there. It looks pretty good. The main reason I want to put this one is because I just like the way the guitar sounded with the metal bridge. But at a later date, if I prefer, I can put this one on. And this is just one I bought from eBay. I've already notched it up for the strings. But it's a perfect fit. I'm not even going to have to reprofile that curve for the top of the body, because just looking at it, it's absolutely spot on. I think it looks a bit better actually, to be quite honest, but it's going to depend what it sounds like at the end of the day. No, I'm just using wire wrap wire actually. It doesn't matter what tape I use to try and tape these off so that they don't disappear through the hole. It just falls right off. Gradually getting there, so all I'm doing anyway is I'm just threading the wire through here like so. There's a number of ways you can do this. You can use dental floss. I've seen somebody using pipe cleaners and stuff. And of course the important thing is not to forget to put this gnarly washer on the bottom. So I'm just wrapping the wire around the top. I can't wrap it around the threaded part because it'll be too wide to go through the hole then. So I'm just wrapping it around there like that, and then tying it off through the top of there, bring it back around again like that. That seems to be strong enough, and then I can pull this through here, and the washer won't fall off because of the wire. And then I can pull that through here, hopefully. It's a bit of a fiddle. There we go, so it's come through, and then I can drop the washer and the nut just over the top of the wire, so I know it's not going to become irretrievable until I actually get the nut on the top, which works out very nicely. There we go. Just get it on there. It doesn't have to be in the right orientation or anything, but anyway, it's on. It's not going to come off now. That's the important thing, and we can take this off, and that's another one done. So I've got two more to do: the jack, the switch, and of course the ground wire, which I've got on here. Of course I've done this the wrong way around. I've pulled it out when I realised my mistake earlier on, so I'll have to do that again, tie it off, pull the earth wire through, and then we can put the tailpiece on. Alright, as you can see, I got a bit carried away with the off-camera work here. I'm sorry about that. The last thing I was doing on camera was fishing the wiring through the top here. And as I said, the next thing to do was to put the tailpiece on and the pickguard, and that just happened so quickly. And it was pretty hot in here at the time, and I was starting to get a bit flustered and hot and bothered. But anyway, it literally took 5 to 10 minutes to put the rest of the bits on, and I didn't have the camera on. But basically, it was just the exact reverse of the disassembly process we did at the beginning. Absolutely straightforward. Obviously, the tailpiece went on, no problem. There we are, strap button on the back, absolute simplicity itself. Put the screw in. They were original Ibanez parts as well, so the screws fit. I think the scratch plates turn out particularly nice, actually, depending on what angle you look at it from. It's got a bit of finger grease on it now, but wet sanding it definitely was the right thing to do, and I think the pickup rings look nice as well. I've put the strings back on. These are the original strings that came with the guitar because I didn't want to waste a new set of strings on it until I was sure everything was just so. Actually, there's been a little bit of a time lapse here. This is actually a few days after I finished the guitar, so I've had a chance to mess with the setup a little bit, obviously string it, tune it up, play it a bit. It's not particularly easy to get a very, very low action on this guitar without a lot of buzzing, but I'm thinking that it actually could be the strings. So a nice new set of strings might help there. I've got very little relief on the neck, that's the way I like it, but of course with these being gauge 11 strings, a sort of a medium action isn't too much of a problem, it's quite playable. But there it is. I think it's turned out very nicely indeed. And the gentleman on the Jazz Guitar Forum I was talking to about this, I sent him a picture of this. He loves what I've done with it. And we were talking up this guitar anyway between us, how nice it is and how it's really it's on a par with the LGB30 in terms of sound quality, of materials, and obviously the neck profile. Frets aren't quite as nice out of the factory, stuff like that. But yes, just a really, really nice instrument, and what I'm really relieved about is that I haven't ruined the acoustic qualities that really made this guitar difficult to put down in the first place. But just as a bit of an afterthought, what I actually did, I got some auto sol polish, and I took some of the bits of hardware that I actually removed from this guitar, and I tried to buff off this weird murky finish on the top of the hardware, partly because I'd seen another AKJV95 that somebody de-reliced, and they'd used silver chrome finish hardware, and it looked quite nice. So I was curious to know what the actual finish of the hardware underneath all the relicing was. Well, it turns out it's gold, so I think I picked the right colour. This material, it sort of polishes off and it reveals a pale gold, obviously very tarnished finish underneath. Same thing on the tailpiece there, you can see the gold started to come off in the middle. It's to be expected, but and it would be extremely hard work to try and take all this stuff off by hand, and I think it does look convincingly old now. This is how an old pickup looks, pickup cover. That's what an old pickup cover looks like. It doesn't tend to look like this unless it's been buried underground for years on end. So there it is anyway. You can see in a slightly more natural pose. I mean, the finish at the top is just absolutely gorgeous, and it suits the gold hardware so well, I think. Now, with this Tune-o-matic bridge, the rattle is much lessened. Well, as I say, I'm not really going to know until I change the strings. So I've done a few more things to this guitar since we started. So this section's been recorded quite a long time after I started this project, and I've done a few more things to this guitar, and there's more yet to do. This is the fourth Tune-o-matic bridge if you count the original one. I went through quite a few. This one's got springs on the little saddles to keep them from rattling. That improved matters, because I'm still getting rattling problems with this guitar, and I've actually ordered a new pickguard for it, slightly thicker one. This one is a bit flimsy and it does tend to resonate with the body of the guitar. Other than that, I haven't really changed anything else. I'm not too happy with these gauge 11 strings. I think I'm going heavier strings in that direction rather than lighter. I tend to lose thin strings when I'm playing. They don't offer enough resistance, and I like to really know where the string's going to be when I hit it. So this was an experiment with gauge 11 strings, which I thought would suit this guitar, and I don't think I'm going to stick with it. I'll definitely go to 12s, or maybe even Tomastic Swing 13s. That's a JS113 set. I've got a couple of those sets, so I might try those, but we'll see anyway. It's got an interesting tone, this guitar. It has a slightly metallic tone because of this bridge, I think, and I kind of like that. And I've got lots of different guitars with wooden bridges, and I figured, what's the point of having all the guitars sounding much the same? So I've stuck with a metal bridge. And it does have a nice, it doesn't have a lot of acoustic resonance, this guitar, but it does have a nice deep jazz sort of tone, or you can get a nice jazz tone out of it if you set the amp up accordingly. Not quite what I wanted to say, but but yeah, it's nice. It's a nice player, and it does remain a favourite, even though it keeps giving me teething problems, and I think I'm still a ways off getting it to sound just the way I want it to. It has turned out very nicely indeed, and I do enjoy it. So if you roll the tone right off, So if you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, feel free to subscribe to the channel, and thank you very much for watching. I hope to tackle some more interesting projects going forward. I like buying up obscure low-priced guitars and fixing them up and restoring them, and I realise there's plenty of channels on YouTube doing that kind of thing, but hopefully I can put my own slant on it. And I'm well positioned to do some interesting comparisons between some very similar Ibanez guitars, because I've simply bought so many of them. So anyway, thank you very much again for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video. So bye bye for now.